when it comes to mental health, depression, how much of this is environmental versus how much of it is genetics?
About 60%. Like, I mean, I always think of that because there's this researcher, Sonia Lemirsky, who she studied happiness, and she looked at about, well, how much of your happiness is under your control and how much of it is factors that are outside of your control. And that's what she came to. But I think that's an average. And one of the important things is we need to use science and averages for what those are good for. And you need to understand your own unique brain once you reach the limits of averages, because things can be true for a group that like aren't true for you. But when you're trying to be scientific, you're like, okay, so what is it? 60%? Like, well, for you, like, what are you focusing on that you have control over? And maybe some people have more control over their lives and they maybe have a greater ability to control their happiness. But like, if you're one of those people who are like, well, maybe I'm just stuck and all of my life is terrible and I don't have as much ability to control my happiness. Well, it is that focus, that belief that all the things you can't control are more important, and that's where you're focusing on. Well, that is something that you can control, that you could start to change. And that's where I think sometimes focusing on the like, well, what's the average? What's the percent? Like, so if I do this, like, how much is it going to change me? Or how much is it going to help? Or how many hours? Is it going to be 10,000 hours to be an expert? It's going to be 66 hours to create a habit. Well, these averages that science have figured out are really helpful. Knowing nothing about yourself. Okay, you can assume it is this. But then very quickly, you need to start understanding like, well, how does this apply to me? How can I use this? Because you are not a laboratory experiment. So a lot of these things are done on groups of people or in tightly controlled laboratory conditions. And so we shouldn't ignore that. That would be like ignoring gold. Like, it's taken a lot of researchers a lot of time to come up with like how many hours on average you should exercise each week and how much you should sleep to feel rested and perform at your best. So you should start there and then use the process of science to understand like, okay, so like which of these different tools work best for me right now and in what combination. So I always like to think of this as a process of self-discovery and not just following protocols or averages or memorizing scientific facts.
I believe it's Arthur. Is it Arthur Brooks? He studies happiness at Harvard. He talks about the different types of, whether you feel happiness like really high and sadness like really low versus, or if you vice versa, excuse me, or all high or all low. And I've realized that I'm like, I feel the positive pretty low and I feel the negative pretty high. And that's kind of took me a bit
That
to
doesn't
figure
seem
out.
like that's surprising. Just
Yeah.
talking to you for a few minutes.
Yeah, I think it's because I am kind of that hard charging kind of goal oriented person. When I get those, I expect to have like these big payoffs, and I feel the exact same. And I don't feel, you don't have that dopamine hit or that end result that you thought you would. You think like you put these goals up on that pedestal, and you're like, once I achieve this, everything's going to be X, everything's going to be that much better, or whatever it is. And then when you do achieve them, it's like great for like 30 seconds. And then you're like, okay, on to the next. And so what I've really been kind of focusing on and what I've realized is like I was fortunate enough to realize that about myself, and I've just been dialing on the journey, like the day. Like I still set those goals, I still set those ambitions, but I'm trying to remember that I'm having a lot of fun while I'm doing it, and when I do get it and that 30-second payoff hits, like that can't be the end result. And so by having that focus, I've really been able to change my mental health, change my overall level of happiness to my day. Like my day has increased in happiness because I'm not just chasing for that end result and then being dissatisfied, if that makes
and
sense.
there's a real clear neuroscience reason for that. And this is like, I feel like I was probably like that for a while as well. I'm still like that sometimes. And it's awkward because I'm like, wait, I wrote a whole book about this. I shouldn't fall into these patterns. I'm like, I'm such an idiot. I'm like, oh, right. Just because I know these things doesn't mean they're automatically always programmed into my brain. So, but like, I get it. And that's one of the things I found neuroscience so helpful to explain some of these things where I'm like, why do I do that? Like, what's wrong with me? And starting to realize, like, oh, like there's nothing wrong with me. Like, that's how the human brain works. Or, like, that's how my brain works. Like, not everybody is like this, but depending on the tuning of different circuits, like, my brain is like this. And this is one of those things about goals that's really interesting, is that goals and setting goals is really helpful for engaging your dopamine system. So when your brain sees something that it can make progress to complete, that's moving you in a direction you want to go, it automatically engages your dopamine system to start moving towards there. It's like in video games, you start getting points, or you get little coins or dings for doing something. Oh, you're like, oh, let me do that more. Like, it's just how your brain is wired. And that's why video games are designed the way they are. And you can use that to kind of hack things sometimes. But one of the downsides is when we set goals, we're so like jacked into like trying to achieve that goal. Sometimes we stop to wonder, like, wait, is this even the goal I want to be setting? Or is this taking me away from other things that are important? But setting goals is a powerful tool. It's just there's sometimes drawbacks. And the other key aspect of it is the dopamine circuit. Like, once you accomplish that goal, it's like you get a boost, but then it's like, okay, well, so what's next? What's onto the next goal? And like, that's just what that system evolved to do. So you need other things in your life, or you'll quickly run out of energy and motivation.
All right, everybody, as much as I'd love to just hit record, talk to my guests, and give you guys a great episode, I got to interject sometimes. The platforms do care about reviews. They do care about subscribers. They do care about views. So if you're listening to this, if you get anything from it, do me a huge favor. Hit follow, leave a review, whatever that looks like on the platform that you're watching. It helps so much. It gets this episode pushed out to more people, and that lets me get even more guests. I appreciate you. You guys are awesome. I never thought this podcast would be where it is now. When I started with episode 1, who knew if I was getting to episode 2? And here we are, just plugging away. I'm booked out for months. It is an absolute blast, and I appreciate you guys being a part of it. Just do me one more solid. Hit follow, leave a review. It helps a ton. See you guys in the next episode. You mentioned you wrote a book on it, and yet you still find yourself having to remind yourself. Why is it that the brain is just so set in its ways, so fickle? Why can't we have a little bit more control over this? Like, you write a book about it, you learn about it, you teach it, and yet you still find yourself falling back onto the basic instincts of your brain.
It's because you're expecting too much of the brain, probably. But it's also like a lot of times it just comes down to this simple understanding that different parts of your brain evolved for different purposes, and they pull you in different directions. So, like when it comes to learning something, we learn it in different ways. Like there's one part of your brain that learns facts, and we learn facts in a different way than we sort of learn experiences that we've had, where you can recall like Proust's, he smells the smell and like goes off into remembering something. Like we remember things in different ways. And there's another that is about the habitual part of the brain that remembers just through action. We call it muscle memory, but it's really like that circuit in your brain remembers things. And it's not always just physical actions, it's also patterns of thinking and patterns of social interaction. And we learn these patterns, whether we're consciously aware of them or not, whether someone taught that to us or not. So like sometimes if you're trying to remember a password to a website, you might not consciously remember it. But if you just like go to the website and just like start typing, it might just come out of you. And so, uh, like a lot of times when we don't do something automatically, it's because we know it and we've memorized it, but we haven't trained the habit circuit in our brain to do it automatically. And so sometimes when you're like, I get frustrated or angry about myself, I remind myself that like, right, these different parts of your brain like want different things. They follow different logic. And this habit circuit in your brain is sort of like a dog. And you can't argue with a dog and use logic with a dog. I mean, you can, but it's sort of a waste of time. And you could be like, why do you keep jumping on this couch? I told you not to jump on the couch. But like, right. Like the dog doesn't care about what you want or what you know or what you think or what's logical. It just does what it is trained to do. And if that's going different from your goals or what you want, well, guess what, buddy? It's up to you to train it. But it's not helpful to get mad at the dog. And it's actually illogical to like call the dog illogical or argue logically with the dog. The dog has its own logic. And so understanding that logic and how you can start to reprogram those circuits so that these things start to become more automatic is a key part of making them consistent in the long term. But just like knowing something or trying it once or trying it a couple times isn't always enough to make it automatic.
You mentioned we have the learning part of our brain that's habitual. We learn habits physically as well as mentally. I notice, at least for me, physical habits are a lot easier to establish or get rid of than the mental ones. And I assume that's because you can either increase or reduce the friction on those physical habits so much easier. Like if I want to run more, I can put my running shoes, get all my clothes ready and like reduce the friction on that habit. Or if I want to stop eating Oreos every night, I can stop buying Oreos. And then that's hard to do. Versus if I have a mental habit of, being negative every time something happens to me, there's no friction there. Like I can't reduce that friction or increase that friction.
You can actually, it's just more abstract. I think one of the reasons why physical habits are so much easier to change is because they're concrete. It's easier to think in black or white, like, have I done this? They're more controllable and verifiable. So if you're like, I'm going to go to the gym 3 days this week, okay, like, well, you either did that or you didn't do that. It's easier for someone else to evaluate, like, yes, did you do that or not do that? As soon as it comes to things for our own thoughts, well, you're the only person who could hold yourself accountable, and it's easier to wriggle out of your own sense of accountability because you can lie to yourself really easily, or you can reinterpret it really easily. And um, it certain like behaviors that we can make easier or harder. Like it's easier to work out when I have all of my workout clothes on and I'm at the gym. So like sometimes when I'm trying to help people take advantage of the upward spiral, I'm like, okay, well, don't try to convince yourself to do a tough workout while you're wearing, where you're in your underwear on sitting on your couch. Like, well, just get dressed and then go to the gym and then make the decision. And that decision is much easier to make when your environment is different. And so, like, the same thing, though, is true of a lot of mental habits that we have. If you are in an environment or surrounded by people who believe in you and share your values and are supportive of you, well, it's much easier to like automatically think and act in that way. And that's why the people that you surround yourself with and how they think and the kinds of goals they have, well, it's easier to fall into those same patterns when you're around those people. And so those are if ways to change that friction, but also the environment that you surround yourself with. So simple things like, what pictures do you have on your wall? Like, are these subtly reminding yourself of your good qualities and the capabilities that you have and your goals and your strengths and your dreams? This is what like a vision board is for, but it's not some like mystical thing. It's just triggering different parts of your brain to remember, oh, right. Like, oh yeah, I wanted to write another book, or I wanted to do this other thing. So like for me, I have this stack of books. It's not just like advertising for my book, but it's also like some of these books are The Upward Spiral in different languages. It's been translated into like 14 different languages. And just because I've written a book and have a PhD doesn't mean I like don't doubt myself and wonder like does anyone care about what I'm doing? Is any of this real? Like, science by its nature is unclear. Like you could have a really clear idea and someone else is like, no, it's total opposite. And so you wonder, like, am I full of shit? Like, does anyone like, do I actually know what I'm talking about? And so sometimes when I'm doubting myself, I look at the stack of books with all of the different translations where it's in Chinese and Russian and German and Dutch. And I'm like convincing myself that like, right, like I know what I'm talking about. Like maybe it's possible that I just fooled everyone. That's possible. Okay. But it's probably more likely that I do know what I'm talking about most of the time. And part of my brain is like, oh, but what if you don't? And like, well, that is sometimes dealt with a different approach where I'm like, oh, you know what? It's probably also true that I don't know everything, that I'm not perfectly correct about everything, but that's okay. But like just with like little reminders of how competent and successful I am, it's easier to feel that way. But even if I don't automatically feel that way, I remember, oh, it's okay that you don't always feel that way. You can still take action towards these goals or help people or move towards your values. And that's actually, I think, one of the most important tools that I often work with people on is self compassion, because we often think of self compassion as just lowering your standards. But really, self criticism is often trying to control something that you don't have control over. And it allows us to wriggle out of our accountability for ourselves because you're like, no, but I got really mad at myself. So that's okay. I don't actually have to do the work. And self-compassion is like, oh, I know it's difficult, but like, it's important. So you could keep scrolling on social media, like, or you could actually do the work, and your brain will try to, find ways to get out of that by like getting really mad at yourself. But like, again, surrounding yourself with people who believe in you and call you on your own BS, treating yourself with compassion, surrounding yourself with reminders, like these are the ways to reduce the mental friction to start to change some of those negative mental habits.
One of the things I love about having this podcast is I have a concrete permanent medium in which I can look back on episode 1 versus where we are now and kind of see my improvement. And I had this really interesting thought pattern the other day. I spent like most of the day feeling like really good. Like I felt good about, the effort I was putting in on the podcast. I felt, good about the effort I was putting on my goals. Like everything was feeling really good. I was going to the gym. I was feeling really good. I went to friends, hung out with them. We're a bunch of nerds. We were playing some board games. Everything was a great time. As soon as I got done, I was driving my car home. It was like a 30-minute drive. And on that drive home, I had a podcast, I was set to record the next day. And mind you, the whole day I was feeling great about everything. By halfway through that ride home, I was like, what is the point? Like, you're not a good conversationalist. Like, there's no, like, you can't, what questions do you possibly have? Like, all of this stuff. And there was absolutely no catalyst. There was no event that was like a bad event that should have triggered it. There was nothing that was going on. And luckily I was able to like pull myself out of that. I was like, whoa, what is happening? I was like, I felt great all day. Why am I all of a sudden like, where did this come from? And I was able to kind of have that rationale and able to look at my thoughts kind of objectively. I was like, okay, just let these suckers go by. I'll probably feel better in the morning. But it was very interesting to me that I had that extreme shift in mindset without anything that should have triggered that, like no bad event.
Yeah. No, I think that's a lot of great self-awareness that you have too, and that you are able to pull yourself out just like by having that self-awareness. For me, that phenomenon was probably one of the main reasons I wrote The Upward Spiral in the first place and started recognizing the power of neuroscience, because I started coaching. This is a little tangent, but started coaching the UCLA women's ultimate frisbee team back
Awesome.
in 2023. And there was one girl on the team, and it was a completely new team. And there was one girl on the team who always was kind of confusing to me because she was like really athletic. She picked up things really fast and she was like funny and friendly, but she would just like miss practice a lot. And I was like, oh, maybe she's just flaky. But when she was there, she'd like always be trying her hardest. And at sometimes when it came to scrimmage time, she would be like, oh, I'm feeling kind of sick. Is it okay if I sit it out? I'm like, you were just like sprinting all over the place. Like, how can you be sick? Like, this is the fun part, like what's going on. And it wasn't until several months later that she revealed that what she was going through was depression. And she was like, that's the best way that I can describe it to people. I'm just sick, or like because it's hard to explain like why I am that way. Like she couldn't explain it herself. And watching her was one of the first like major shifts I had in my understanding of depression, because often we think of depression as like you have a bunch of bad things happen to you, so you're depressed. And it doesn't make sense when you're like, oh, but your life is great and you're smart and successful. So like, why would you be depressed? And it's because of the dynamics of how the brain works. And we don't fully understand everything about the brain, but we understand a lot of the dynamics that create those issues. And so, one way I like to think of this sometimes is like traffic, because your brain is a dynamic system, sort of like traffic or the weather or the stock market. And oftentimes, like if you're driving along and there's a traffic jam, there's a very clear cause to it. Oh, there's an accident. Oh, there's construction. But the nature of these kinds of systems, sometimes it can happen for no particular cause. Like I'm in LA. So because of the complexity of the freeway system, maybe this is why I always think of it similar to the brain and these pathways. But like a lot of times you're just driving along and it's a Saturday afternoon and traffic's cruising down the freeway, and all of a sudden you're like stuck in a traffic jam and you're like inching along, and all of a sudden it's gone. And there was no cause. And that, when it comes to depression, a lot of times we drive ourselves crazy because we're like, well, what's the cause? What's the one cause that created all of this? And there isn't often one, particularly when your life looks great. Like there's not one cause, but you are maybe a little hard on yourself. But your self-criticism, that's not the cause. It's just, that's not even a bad habit. It's like our tendencies that our brain has and our good habits, even in our bad habits, combine in these unfortunate ways sometimes, given the specific circumstances of our life and the specific goals we're trying to accomplish. So like for that specific situation, you wouldn't have probably started to go into a downward spiral except for the fact that it was really important to you to do your best. If you didn't care about doing your best, well, then your own self-criticism wouldn't have affected you so much. But like you really cared about your best, but you didn't have full control over that. And then the whispers of your self-criticism, you start focusing on everything you can't control and how bad that will be. And you didn't have anyone else there to be like, oh, it's going to be okay, man, whatever. Like all you can do is be stuck with your thoughts and spiral. And then we can end up in a dark place. And you're fortunate enough that you had enough awareness and positive tendencies and habits to think your way out of it. But like thinking your way out of it is just one tool that you can use. Sometimes there's physical activity or like taking a breath or like, well, let me just go to sleep. Sleep is helpful. I'll feel better tomorrow. And sometimes the answer is realizing like, oh, I don't have full control over my emotions. It's okay that I feel this way. And that's the power of acceptance. Because even though you understand all of these things and you could have this whole toolbox of different things you can do, there's some things about your emotions that there's literally nothing to do with other than just experience them. And for a lot of smart, successful people, that's the piece that they spend all of their time and energy like trying to avoid. Like, no, there's got to be a way I could think about this differently. There's got to be a way I could, put on a better music or do box breathing or whatever. And like, yeah, those are all helpful tools and you should do those things. But like, no matter how many helpful tools, because you have a human brain, there will always be some tiny sliver or percentage of like, quote unquote, false alarms where it feels like everything is terrible, but like, yep, that's just how it feels. There's nothing to do with it. And sometimes the way I think about that is like having a smoke alarm. Sometimes it means that your house is on fire and you need to get outside as fast as possible. You're going to die. other times it means your spouse left the toast in the toaster too long. Like, you shouldn't be mad at your smoke alarm for like going off sometimes, but sometimes it goes off and you're like, oh, I don't need to do anything about this. I should just use that as an opportunity to be like, oh, I'm glad my smoke alarm's working, and like it's kind of annoying, but like, okay, let me just keep going.
The smoke alarm and the traffic analogy are both fantastic, and I'm definitely going to start thinking about those a lot more because they're super helpful, especially with, like you said, I was able to think my way out of it. I was able to think my way out of it because I spent a lot of times not being able to do anything to get out of it, and I'd spiral down and down and down. And so fortunately, I've read a lot about this. I've practiced a lot of this, and a lot of times people, like when they hear you and I talking about this, they're gonna think, okay, next time I have that downward spiral, I'm going to address it, and I'm gonna look at it objectively, and they think that makes it better. But it didn't for me. Like, I still felt bad. Like, those thoughts were still coming in. They were still coming in. I was still feeling them. I was still feeling self-conscious and uncomfortable. I didn't feel instantly better, but I was able to look at it objectively and say, like, okay, it's going to be okay. Like, I can
Yeah.
still continue.
Well,
I
you
can still
can't
perform.
always make yourself feel better. And that's where people are stuck because they're like, but I can't make myself feel better. But you probably can make yourself feel worse.
Yeah.
So just whatever you're doing right now to like make yourself feel worse, like stop doing that. And you're like, but what's the point of doing that? I'm not going to feel better. Right. Oh, I can't make myself feel better. Okay. So then that's the part you accept. But like, oh, well, I can stop doing these things that are making myself feel worse. But the other thing, though, that you just said that like I really wanted to address is that the way a lot of people think about these issues, they're like, okay, yeah, next time I'm spiraling, like, what do I do to get in there? It's like, buddy, don't wait until you're in that situation. Like, when I was coaching Ultimate Frisbee, a lot of times the players would ask me, like, I'm in this terrible situation on I'm like stuck on the sideline, and like the I'm running out of time to throw, and there's like 3 defenders. Like, what do I do? Well, like, how did you get in that situation? If this is the first time you've ever been in this situation, okay, like, deal with it. But like, usually it's frustrating because you keep finding yourself in this situation. But our thoughts are like, okay, so when I'm in this terrible situation, what can I do to get out of it? And when you're in the terrible situation, like your brakes aren't working, well, there's limited number of things you can do. And maybe you can get better at like, okay, knowing I pull up my, emergency brake and like downshift and find the truck runner off ramp, and like, but there's limited number of things you can do. But once you get to the side of the road and you're no longer in that terrible situation, you don't want to be like, whew, okay, glad I got out of that one. Okay, let me get back on the road. And like if it was the very first time, or the only ever time it happened, like, okay, maybe you can't fault yourself. But like, this is the pattern that keeps happening. Well, then you're contributing to it because you aren't curious about what you could do about it at a time that would be helpful. So it's when you are stopped at the side of the road, when you are not in a downward spiral, when you're not about to crash, that's the time when you should be like, maybe I should take this to a mechanic. Or like, the problem was realizing that like the problem that you're in right now isn't the actual problem. It's that like 3 days ago when you heard your car making this weird noise and you told yourself, it'll probably be fine. Like, no, that's the problem. Like, if you want to stop getting in the same situation over and over again, it's actually your positive thinking that is keeping you stuck, because you actually should have been more worried 3 days ago, because then you would have taken it to a mechanic 2 days ago and then you wouldn't be stuck now. But this is where a lot of times our positive habits also contribute to the downward spirals that we get stuck in. And those are the hardest addictions to give up sometimes, because you're like, no, but I don't want to worry for no reason. I'm not supposed to think positively. It's like, right, you should think positively where positive thinking is helpful. But some issues, it's not a matter of thinking positive. Like you need to change something. Like just like when we're talking about trying to get yourself to work out, like, okay, if you were just at the gym in your workout clothes, you wouldn't need so much positive thinking in order to work out. So like when you're at home, if you're winning the battle with positive thinking and you inspire yourself, great, use it. But if you're losing the battle with positive thinking and you keep getting stuck in the same problem, okay, well then clearly that tool is not helping you. So stop relying on that tool, even if it is sometimes helpful in other situations, or even if it is generally helpful for most people in most situations. Like, is it helpful for me right now, given what I'm trying to do?
That's really interesting. And I've never actually thought about, I've never thought about the positive things that I may be doing to contribute to my downward spiral. And I would also never have thought about how much my past, 1 to even 3 days affects the moment that I'm in now. Probably should have. That makes sense. It definitely does. So, what would be some things that people could do on their good days to help set them up for their bad days, or, at least not allow them to fail and crash? I'm about to head to the gym. I hope you guys get some movement in today as well. But I just wanted to jump in here really quick and say I appreciate you guys listening. If you could do me one more quick favor, just leave a review or a like or a follow or a subscribe wherever you guys are watching. It helps so much. It lets me get more viewers, all that fun stuff. I get more guests, and really it just lets me do this with better efficiency, give you guys a better product, because I can show the analytics to these guests and say, hey guys, look, it is worth your time to be here. I've got all these amazing listeners. So just do me a huge favor, like, follow, review, all that nonsense, and then enjoy the episode and go get some movement in. Thank you guys.
There's a ton of different like mental things that you can do and physical things that you can do. I like to start with the dumb stuff. Like there's this Snickers commercial, I think, from like 7 or 8 years ago, where like Betty White is yelling at a bunch of football players. She's like, you're a loser. You're weak. Stop getting knocked over. Like, come on, you got to run the routes. And then someone's like, hey, coach, think you need a Snickers. Or I think you're hungry. And like they hand her a Snickers bar and like turns back into like the football coach. Like sometimes the reason you feel the way you do is because of dumb things. Like, oh, you didn't eat. You didn't sleep well last night. And those are the things that don't require a lot of skill. And there's not like a shortcut. Like there's not an easier way to do them. You just have to do them. And the faster that you can just make a habit of doing the things that are generally helpful, that's not going to solve all of your problems, but it's going to prevent you from self-inflicted wounds, or it's going to reduce the likelihood it's going to be a problem. So like for your car, taking it in for regular maintenance and checking your tire pressure every once in a while. And like, there's just little things you can do that doesn't stop your car from breaking down. It just like means that, well, you're probably going to keep it in good condition or catch a problem early when it's cheap and easy to fix. And so with your life, those are things like sleep and exercise, and actually not even exercise, quote unquote, but like just physical activity. Like don't sit on a couch or sit at your computer for 8 hours straight. Like get up, walk around, be generally active. And the reason why I just sometimes say don't focus too much on exercise is because sometimes people are like, well, I don't have time to go to the gym or whatever. Okay, well then just like run up the stairs twice or just like do 10 jumping jacks. Like just moving your body, being generally active, um, being around other people, like not trying to do everything by yourself, eating real food, sometimes like we try and like jump into supplements and fancy whatever. And it's like, well, just if you just get some exercise and get some sunlight in the morning, so your brain clock is set up correctly, and you get some good sleep, and you're doing stuff with other people and fun stuff occasionally, like that sets the stage. That's gonna reduce the likelihood of these downward spirals by a lot. How much? Well, it's different for different people, because some people's brains are more likely to get stuck in a downward spiral. But that's the first thing to start with, because it's the most controllable and the easiest to identify. From there, you want to start thinking about like, oh, like what is important to me, and what am I trying to control about that they don't actually have control over. And the important stuff that you actually have control over, like that's what you should set your goals on and strategize and plan around. And the other stuff, that's stuff that you should practice self-compassion on, or acceptance, or slow breathing. Although I would say like breathing, that's something you can control. But like, oh, that's a good habit that you can do when you're focused on stuff that you can't control. Um, but knowing which is key. And that's really challenging, because our emotions are based on the important stuff that we can't control. The stuff we're scared about, the stuff we're frustrated about, the stuff we're worried about, the stuff we're angry about, whatever, like that's all about important stuff that you can't control. And then your habits, those are programmed based on the stuff you have control over, whether or not they are important to you. And those are different brain circuits. And then the analytical part of your brain, it can sort of sort that out and try and see like, well, which habit we should use and which one we should override, and which emotions are helpful and which ones are unhelpful. But there are three different circuits. They're all pulling you in different directions. And so over time, you want to recognize like that awareness of what are the situations that I keep getting into, and do a little bit of planning. Like, what could I do now to avoid them? Oh, well, I get in this downward spiral because I'm really hard on myself. Oh, okay. Well, I can't always control whether I fall into a downward spiral, but next time I'm going to create a better plan. I'm going to be more compassionate with myself and reassuring, just as if a friend was talking to me. And so when you're driving alone in your car, some random thought pops into your head like, oh, shoot, did I do this? Or what if I didn't prepare? What if this goes happen? You can't control what that random thought pops into your head. That's going to activate an emotion. That emotion is going to trigger a habit. The habit's going to be like, you idiot, you should have done that. Whatever, like, and you'd be like, I can't actually stop myself from feeling this emotion. I can't stop myself from doing this mental habit of self-criticism. Oh, what I can do is take a few breaths, which doesn't solve everything. It just calms down the reactivity of my emotion circuit. Oh, and I can start reminding myself of how it's going to be okay and my positive qualities. And that doesn't solve everything. It just, makes it easier to ignore this negative voice. So practicing some of those things that you would do if you were in that situation is helpful, like self-compassion, like breathing, like gratitude, um, because a lot of people don't practice those things because they're like, well, I'm feeling good. Why would I think about the times when I'm feeling bad? And to me, actually, as an ultimate Frisbee coach, this was one of um, the things that I thought about a lot, which is if you want to perform your best in games, well, you're going to be stressed out in games. So you have to stress yourself out more in practice so that you will perform the way you want in a game. But people don't do that because it makes practice less fun sometimes. And that's perfectly okay. That's where you just need to clarify what is important to you. Is my goal in this just to have fun? Like, is your goal in the podcast just to have fun? Well, then if it's not fun, stop doing it. Like, I used to do stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
And I just did it for fun. It was never my dream to be a stand-up comedian. And at some point, it stopped being fun. And it took me a long time to realize, like, oh, so then I should just stop doing it. Whereas writing a book or building a coaching business, like, there are many times where that wasn't fun. I had to remind myself, oh, that's okay. Like, yes, it's nice when it's fun, but I'm not doing this just because it's fun. And I'm doing it because of it's important and to help people. Like, you need to be clear about why those things are. And like, I wish it was fun, but for those are the pieces that I can't control, I'm going to be compassionate with myself. And the irony is once you accept those things that you can't control, then they stop being so distracting because I'm trying to make writing a book really meaningful and important and help people and also fun. And so my brain's going to remind me all the time about how not fun this is. Once I remind myself, oh yeah, I'm not doing it for fun. Like, it's nice if it's fun, but I'm not doing it for fun. Then my brain will stop distracting me with how not fun it is. And then I can actually, it'll be more fun.
That's a great way to look at it, to frame the things, frame what you're doing as what you want out of it. If, for example, I was talking to Amy Morin a couple days ago. She's has a TED Talk. She talks about like mental strength and all these things, and wrote books as well. And we were talking about having things that we do just for the sake of fun, and we both get in the habit of trying to monetize, or what can I get, or how can I make this more efficient, but versus labeling that as fun. Like for me, you know, hanging out with my friends and playing board games, like that's fun. But often I found myself thinking like, okay, we'll start a YouTube channel. We'll mic everybody up. We'll have a top down view. Everybody, it'll be great. And then I'm like, then I'm like thinking about, you know, how many subscribers can I get? You know, what thumbnails and all that extra work. And then it's no longer fun. And just the thought of that, like while I was thinking about that, made the time that I was having with my friends that much less, you know, fun. And that's what I wanted it to be. And so if I can clarify that for this podcast or all those things, it really helps remove all those other things that kind of wheedle and needle their way into there and kind of get you clear and focused on what you're doing.
And it's challenging, I was going to say, because there are many things that are important to us. It's very important to you to have fun with your friends. It's also very important to you to, you know, I'm guessing, express yourself creatively and to help people. Those are all things that are important to you. And your brain is like, it wouldn't be nice if we could just like do all of those things at the same time. It was going to be really easy. Because it's probably also important to you to do things in an easier way, if that's available to you, than a harder way for no reason, because we don't want to just like torture ourselves for no reason. And so your brain is like, oh, what if we just do all those things together and it'd be amazing? And like, sure, if that's available to you as an option, like if there's an option that you can choose with whatever you're doing where it's more fun and you make more money and it's more meaningful, then yeah, do that. And we should be lucky, and we are lucky sometimes in life, where all of the things that are important to us kind of line up. Where, oh, the job that I want is actually structured so I enjoy the people that I work with and it's meaningful, and it also gives me the money and the time and flexibility to do other things that's fun. Like, awesome. Like, that's what college is like a lot of times for people. But a lot of times in our lives, we have to make a choice between, well, this thing would be more fun right now, and this thing would be more meaningful, and this thing would help me connect more with other people, and this thing would be like, I would accomplish more. And like, we have these basic needs that all contribute to us being happy. And so you have to focus on, there's 5 sorts of activities that we really need. We need achievement activities and physical activities and social activities and enjoyable activities and meaningful activities. And not everything you do is going to be all 5 of those, but you need a smattering of all 5 of those in your life to really feel like you're flourishing and functioning at your best. And so when you are doing something that is only meant to help you accomplish a goal, but it's not fun, you'd be like, oh, that's okay. I need to accomplish something to feel good. I'll schedule in time for fun later. Just like when you are eating food, like you need food and different kinds of food. If you're eating an apple, you're like, there's no protein in this, right? Yeah, I'm not eating this apple for protein. I'm eating this apple because I need carbs and it's enjoyable, right? Like I'll eat the protein when I need the protein. So like we have these multiple things that are important to us. So we want to clarify any specific thing that we're doing. Like, why am I doing this? It doesn't have to fulfill all of my needs, but it should fulfill some important need. And some important need also is to just chill
Yeah.
sometimes. And so like sometimes you just need to like, why am I just sitting here watching TV? I could be doing something more productive. Well, maybe what you just need is to chill out for half an hour. And if you don't allow yourself to chill out and rest, then you're not going to have the energy and focus to do the stuff that's more important. But like how much exact rest you need is different for different people. But I can say if the entire time you're trying to rest and relax and have fun, you're criticizing yourself for how unproductive you are or how you're not living your values, well, then you're not actually making use of that time and you're going to half-ass your relaxation time, which means you're going to be half-assing your productivity time and you're not going to be fully satisfied.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head there for me. That is me to a T. Like I will be sitting down doing nothing, and then my head will be like, "You could be doing this. You should be doing that. Why are you just sitting here?" And exactly right. That leads to a consistent pattern of often burning out on things. Is like I feel like I have to be all or nothing. Like I'm gonna eat all of the Oreos or none of the Oreos, or I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna watch the TV, but I'm gonna watch the entire series or none of it. And it's been very hard for me to kind of taper down and actually do what's good. Like what's good isn't to do all of it, and what's good is to not do none of it either.
Right.
And fortunately for me, my wife is very, very good at that. Like she can get a treat. She's like, oh, I want a treat, and she'll have a bite. And she'll be like, okay, cool, I'm done. I feel good. And then I'll eat to the point where I'm like, I don't want any more, but it's here and I have to eat it. And so I've been having to navigate that world of being productive by being unproductive at times.
I mean, my wife is amazing. She calls it a purse cookie. Like, we'll be somewhere at like a bakery. And she's like, oh, those cookies look good. Let's get one. I'm like, oh, I'm not hungry. Because if I buy a cookie, it's because I want to eat a cookie. It is unpleasurable to like have this cookie that I can't eat, that I'm not allowed to eat. Like, no, I don't want to buy the cookie. That's a waste of money. And for her, it's the opposite. She's like, oh, but it's like so exciting. She's like, no, that it's in my purse and I can have it for later whenever I want. And irony is that for her, sometimes like just knowing that it's there, like makes her happy and satisfied. And she doesn't even like want the cookies sometimes. So she'll like have like a 3-day-old cookie where she's like, I don't really want this. Do you want it? I'm like, oh yes, I want it. Like, but like what I realize is that different people are different. And sometimes people criticize themselves because they're like, well, my wife is fine doing this, or my friend is fine doing that. And like the way I think about that sometimes is like, imagine you were friends with LeBron James and you were trying to get better at basketball. And LeBron is like, oh, you know what I do? I just like dribble really close to the hoop and then just jump up and I just like put the ball in the hoop. So like, you should do that. And like, you're like, you try to do that. Like, why can't I do that? Like, that's obviously what the best basketball players do. Why can't I do that? Well, if you can do it, do it. And if you can't do it, then it literally doesn't matter that somebody else can do it. Okay, you're just pointing at that other person and their ability to do it as a reason to criticize yourself. Well, imagine if you just stopped criticizing yourself for what you couldn't do and say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to get better at my dribbling and my shooting. I'm going to become Steph Curry or like whatever. You can, once you stop focusing on the things you can't do, then you free up a lot more energy and focus to worry about the things you actually have control over. And so that's where, again, where I find the neuroscience really helpful is that some things people are trying to do, they think something is wrong with them, or they're trying to do something that isn't conducive with having a human brain. And it's like, oh, well, there's not actually something wrong with you here. Like, imagine if you're like, why do I need to sleep every night? Like, oh, well, you have a human brain. The human brain needs sleep. Like, it's not something wrong with you. That's just how the human brain works. Other limitations we have are because different people are different. So that, well, maybe this isn't how everyone's brain works, but this is how your brain works. Like, my friend is fine with 6 hours of sleep, but I need 8 hours of sleep. Okay. Like, LeBron James is 6'8" and I'm 5'9". Okay. Like, different people have different biology. Like, that's just a description. And the faster that you can recognize and understand and accept the tendencies of your own unique brain and what you can change about it and what you can't, either because you just can't change the fundamental tendencies of having a human brain, or you can't fundamentally change these specific tendencies that you have, then the faster you can shift your attention and all of your energy and effort to the important stuff that you actually have control over.
I think I've been able to do that on a lot of things. For example, like my all or nothing attitude, I've been very aware of that. And I'm able to limit it and control it by eliminating the easy factors of that. Like, we won't have treats in the house. Well, when my wife wants one, we'll go get one and then we'll throw it away or what, whatever that is. Like, I've been able to, like, I'm aware of that. No matter how much I want to control it, that's going to be my basic tendency. And I'm sure I can control it for sometimes, but I'm going to fall into those habits. So let me just be aware of that and design my life around that. Some things I have not been very aware of. Like, I always thought growing up, and it wasn't until recently that I even really thought knew I thought this way, but I always thought like the next book or the next piece of information that I got would be the one that fixed it being like
Right.
everything. Like, I just need to read one more book. I just need to, and it's, it's my fault because I didn't get what I wanted to out of that book or what the author intended. I just needed one more piece of information. And it wasn't until recently, within like the past like year or two, where I've been able to been on this introspective journey and like journaled and thought about these things, that I realized like that's never gonna happen. Like, there is no piece of information that fix it. It's just doing the work.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've realized is that, like, okay, so you have this belief, and beliefs are just tools, and they often create emotions, and emotions are tools that can be helpful for some things, or they get in the way of other things. So the belief and the resulting excitement that you feel about listening to one more podcast or reading another book, like, it's helpful to consume more information. And that's why you do it, because it's a helpful way to get yourself to do something that you want to do. Where it's not helpful, however, is, well, it leads to continuing disappointment. And sometimes it means that you get really excited about reading something when really you should just be buckling down and doing the harder work. And the, the powerful insight is realizing that, like, our good habits are never good for everything. Like, they might be good for 90% of the things we're doing, but they create problems when we try to use them for 100% of things. And our bad habits are the reverse. Our bad habits are never always bad. In fact, your bad habits always help you. If they never helped you, you would quickly stop doing them.
Mm.
There's a reason why you don't, put your hand on a hot stove, because it has never helped you. It was always consistently been always bad. But if there is a reason why you keep gambling at a slot machine, because 95% of the time you lose all of your money. But like sometimes it's really helpful, and that keeps you going. And then the irony is that, well, that's sort of a different part. That's the more the dopamine reward circuitry that gets you doing that. But what happens is when you do something initially because it's occasionally rewarded, then it gets programmed in to the habit circuit in your brain. And the habit circuit and the emotion circuit work automatically with each other on autopilot outside of your conscious awareness. So that when you're feeling strong emotions, either excitement or frustration or anxiety, whatever, it automatically triggers your habits, whatever those habits are. The habit circuit doesn't make a distinction between good habits and bad habits. It just knows what your habits are, the things you've been trained to do. And anytime you do a habit, whether it's a thinking pattern or, avoiding my friend or whatever it is, that automatically calms down my emotions. And so that's when habits become problematic, is when they don't really help us in the long term and we don't enjoy them anymore, but we feel compelled to do them because they make us feel comfortable.
Mm.
Like alcohol. Like alcohol is not always a problem if, you know, if you have fun, you enjoy it, you look forward to it. And there's a great research study on people who have who are social drinkers and people who have problematic drinking habits. And people who are social drinkers, when you scan their brains and you show them their favorite alcohol, it lights up the reward centers, these dopamine, the part of the nucleus accumbens, the part of the brain, because it has positive associations. Like, oh yeah, maybe I'd like to go to happy hour. Oh, maybe I'll ask out that cute, lab assistant or later, and we'll have a drink. Like, it's positive associations. For the people who are problematic drinkers, it didn't activate that reward circuitry, just activated the habit circuitry. So that's where something's problematic, where you feel compelled to do it because not doing it creates stress and anxiety. And when it's a really bad habit and when it's an addiction, is like, okay, you have to avoid that short-term negative feeling. And so doing that habit helps you avoid that feeling, but then it creates more problems in the long term, which means you're like, oh, I know what to do. Like your brain's like, oh, I know, let's do the same habit again. And that's when you're really in a downward spiral. But anytime you have a bad habit, if you want to break out of it, you have to first recognize how it is helping you. And you can find another way to get that help that doesn't have the same negative consequences. But like when you were saying, like, I'm just wasting time or whatever. Oh, like what you're describing as like procrastination or avoidance is your brain trying to help you feel calm. So if you're just fighting your brain's like, no, you don't need that. We're not like, okay, then you're just getting in a fight with yourself.
Mm.
But the faster you can realize, oh, my brain's trying to feel calm. Okay, well, then let me find a better way to feel calm, or let me stop fighting it. And then you often only need it for a little bit. Like you can feel satisfied after a 5-minute break. But if you constantly are telling yourself, but I shouldn't be doing this, then you will never even be satisfied after taking an hour break or a 2-hour break. And so it's just basically realizing the limits of our quote unquote good habits and when they start becoming a problem. So, and what are how bad habits are helping us and what are they helping us for? And so it's moving away from black or white thinking of this is good for me, this is bad for me.
Mm.
And instead think, oh, this is like, how is this helpful for me? For which goals? And how is this creating problems? And then you gain a deeper understanding of yourself. And like, if you don't know anything about yourself, start with what science has identified of like, okay, well, you probably need 8 hours of sleep. You need, 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise. Like, just start there. And then you'll be able to adjust, being like, oh, but I actually need more of this or less of this, or like, oh, but like when I'm really stressed, I need more exercise, or like, oh, I need to set up a better plan or whatever. Like, and so I think the goal of it is just to slowly gain a better understanding of yourself and your tendencies and what it is that you need to be the version of yourself that you want.
As soon as you mentioned, those bad habits do have something that helps us or has that little bit of good, I immediately went to my inability to relax and just sit and do nothing. And then you pointed it out. So I got that double confirmation. But I think a lot of that comes from, I think people who are metric driven or goal driven, they wake up, I've been calling like in a productivity deficit. Like I wake up feeling like I'm already behind. And if I
Right.
do everything right, then I've achieved the baseline. Like that's
Right.
where that's the
Yeah.
baseline.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
anything short is I'm not achieving what it should be
Right.
versus kind of not thinking of that way, waking up neutral and like working towards the things that I can do and then taking the rest that I can.
How do you think that anxiety, I'm not going to turn this into a coaching session, but like, how do you think that anxiety helps you?
I mean, it definitely drives me to do a lot. Like I do way more than, people in my coworkers and things like that. I have all of these side projects and things that I work on and I get a lot done and it's super helpful in that aspect.
And that's where, like, the deeper level of this is that's where people who have accomplished a lot are like, no, but I can't let go of this anxiety or this self criticism because that's why I'm successful.
Mm.
And this happens for a lot of smart, successful people because, like, being hard on yourself and like having anxiety is really helpful
Mm-hmm.
at improving your performance in certain situations. So there's something called the Yerkes-Dodson curve, where um, our ideal performance or optimal performance comes when we have a moderate level of stress. Too much stress and our performance goes down, but also too little stress. And if you're a smart, talented person, then chances are like high school, wasn't that difficult for you. And
Mm-hmm.
so being hard on yourself helped you get into that moderate level of stress and it helped you succeed. I call it the Goldilocks rule. Like you want not too little, not too much, like just right. And athletes, when they have that moderate level of success, they perform optimally. They're in the zone. Usually at practice, you would have too little stress. So you need to like amp yourself up. At the championship game, well, you need to like calm yourself down. But it's all about like realizing like, where is my emotional state and what do I need to do to get into this optimal level of stress? But like, if you found it very helpful for most of your life to stress yourself out, well, now it is programmed as a habit, whether in this specific instance, it is actually helpful or not. And so it's uncomfortable to let go of it. But like, I think part of the way out of it is to realize that most people, like, the reason that you're successful is because you're smart and talented and passionate about these things.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, in certain situations, the self criticism and the anxiety helps you, but in other situations, they get in the way.
Yep.
And you're not going to change the fundamental things that are making you successful, but you're not actually successful because of the stress and self-criticism. You're just successful despite those things. And so if you realize like, oh, when are the situations where it's helpful? Great, I'll use it. And when is it actually just exhausting me and is preventing me from these big goals? Well, then I'm going to find a different path. And there's usually some fear under that is protecting you from Because if your brain is like, oh, well, I'm just like exhausted worrying about all of these different things, then I don't have to face my real fear, which is, I don't know what it is. But it's like for some people, it's like, oh, that I could make even more money and still feel this way. Or I could reach even more people and still feel this way. Well, like, then just achieving more people and is never going to solve that. Your brain knows that. And so it's like, well, this is a manageable fear. This is a manageable bad habit. I know what to do with this. It's comfortable or familiar. Um, but yes, I mean, that's like the deeper work of realizing like any bad habit or situation that you are stuck in is protecting you in some way from some deeper emotion about something that's important to you that you don't have control over.
I've never had the ability to, at least the self-awareness to say like, okay, I'm afraid to let this go because X. But my wife, we live here in Denver. She's going to medical school at CU, and she has a habit of taking her test and then freaking out. She's like, I did so bad. And then she always, every single time since we've been married and since I've known her, has always done excellent. Excellent. And we legitimately have this conversation. She looked at me and she said, I'm afraid that if I don't freak out and have this anxiety, I will no longer do good on my tests. And so I need to clip this end and send it over to her.
Well, I mean, it's like, it's not something, because this is the kind of thing that I'm like, people learn these things either in my class or in my, book. And they're like, oh, I need to tell this to someone else. And like telling it to someone else doesn't always have the effect that you want. But like, it's because it's not just a thought. Like going back to what we were talking about earlier, like it's not just, oh, she just needs to change her thinking. Like it's programmed in as a habit. So like if you have a baseball pitcher that has their lucky hat, or like Dumbo has his feather, like it's not just a matter of like, hey, well, logically that's not actually helping you, right? Because it's not controlled by the logical part of your brain. It's controlled by the habit and the emotion circuits on autopilot. They don't care. Like, okay, go ahead and have your logical party here. Like, it's still going to stress you out if you lose your lucky scarf or whatever it is. But like, those things get programmed in there because perhaps randomly at some point you wore this hat and you had a thought like, oh, maybe this will help me pitch better. And then you pitch better. And then those get reinforced over time. And so you might logically know that, well, this isn't causal, right? But the emotional and the habit parts of your brain don't care what you know. So stop like criticizing yourself. And it's not necessarily a problem. Like we don't always have to change bad habits unless we see like, oh, but this is getting in the way of something that's really important to me. So for some people, they don't change their bad habits until they are forced to make a choice. Like, oh, I could keep doing this. This would certainly be easier. Oh, but I'm unwilling to waste that much of my life, or I'm unwilling to give up that energy that I could be spending on my patients or on my kids or with someone like, and it's easier when we think about the other people that we're committed to. But like with yourself, it's always easier to overlook like, oh yeah, but it's just me. I'll suffer. And until you decide to prioritize like yourself, then it's very easy to get stuck in these bad habits because you have to see, oh, I could do what's easier. But that's moving me away from the direction of what's important. Like I want to stop doing this. I want to be more present. I want to do this. Okay, well, you can either do what's easier or you can do what you want. And you can spend all your time wishing and hoping that they're the same thing. But like the option, the opportunity is available to you. It's just that the cost sometimes of doing what you want means it's not going to be as comfortable. And the cost of doing what's comfortable is sometimes like, well, you're not going to get what you want. But you could have either one. You just have to choose whichever one is more important to you at that moment, and you can have it.
Well, Alex, this was an absolute pleasure of a conversation. I really enjoyed it. This one was great. I learned a lot from you, and this is one of my favorite topics to discuss. I love discussing habits. I love discussing mindset and tricks, and I think that's because I've always felt such little control over mine. Like I've always had extreme control over like my physical and what I do, and I've always flexed that. Like I've always been very regimented, but I think it's only until recently that I've realized how little control I have, but also how much control I
Yeah.
have. Like I can't control the exact, but I can control the broad borders.
Yeah.
And it's really fun.
Yeah, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I'm glad you enjoyed it as well. And what that just reminded me of is like, I have sometimes tried to control the physical, but for me, I think early on, there was this like switch that got flipped of like, as I started to learn some neuroscience, there was this like, oh, but if I just like learn enough of it and like research this, then I won't ever have to like feel anxious. I won't have to have other people suffer through these things. And that was a helpful belief because it helped me get a PhD and, learn about more of these things. But there was a point where I was like, oh, no matter how much I learn about the brain or about myself, there will always be some parts that you can't learn your way out of. And so, like, one of the reasons I created a coaching program was to realize, like, oh, essentially, like, you have three paths available to you. You can either try and learn something or think about it in a different way. Like, you can use that, like, cognitive path, and that's really helpful sometimes. Other times, like you just need to do something. You need to go for a run. You need to like change what you're eating. You need to go to sleep, like change your habits. And yeah, you should do those. But there'll always be this little piece over here where there's nothing to do about the emotions. They just are. This is your life. You just experience it. And then tools like self-compassion and acceptance can help us with this. And I realized like even knowing that, there's part of me is like, oh, good. Now I don't have to ever like, nope. It might help me get out of it faster, but it's not going to stop all suffering. But I at least like, I know, and I feel like you probably have this experience too, that like, oh, but all this suffering, all the stress, unnecessarily difficulty they put myself through. Well, at least I can use it to help other people. And that doesn't solve everything, but it's, it feels meaningful.
I have a tradition on this podcast where I ask the guest two closing questions. The first question being, who do you think I should speak to next and why? And then the second is based off of a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote. If we encounter a man of rare intellect, we should ask him what books he reads. What book would you most recommend?
Oh, I have so many books. I think, well, the book I recommend most that comes to mind is Difficult Conversations.
Okay.
I recommend it more than probably any other, like even more than my own book. Like I don't usually recommend my book, like, but Difficult Conversations is really about how to have those tough, uncomfortable conversations, whether it's about relationships or politics or getting a raise. And like, they don't talk about neuroscience at all, but like, it's a perfectly complementary because it's so actionable and insightful about like why we feel so much tension around something that we're like, but I shouldn't, this should be easy. I should be able to ask for a raise or whatever. And like thinking through that. And so I find it like, I know the neuroscience and I know the power of other people and how important it is for us to feel connected. And that just like offers so many helpful insights and like actionable steps of like, oh, well, if you're trying to, solve an argument with your wife or like have a difficult conversation with your boss, like here's how you can think about it or frame it that makes it a little less stressful.
That sounds like a book I absolutely want to read. I'm going to add it to my list. It'll probably be my next one. I'm currently reading, I'm going to mispronounce his name,
Mihai
Johann Hari.
Oh no. Oh,
Yeah.
Johan Hari. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He wrote the book Flow.
Oh,
And I think he's Georgian. Like he has
yeah.
his name's unpronounceable. But yeah, Johan Hari, he has some good stuff.
Yeah, I'm reading it. I can't. Why am I can remember the author, but not the title. It's because I read
Yeah.
on a Kindle and I just open it up and it's right on the page every time, so I don't get to see the title every time. But it's a great book. It's on depression, and that's kind of what a catalyst for also getting to talk to you as well. But yeah, who would you recommend that I speak with next?
Oh, well, um, the first person that popped in, he's a big guy. Um, he wrote a book called Never Split the Difference. Chris
Yeah,
Voss,
yeah.
the FBI negotiator. Um, he like I I watched his master class. Like when
Mm.
master classes come out, my wife got me a subscription, and I like what his was one of the first ones I had watched. I'd never heard of him. I was like, oh, this is brilliant and amazing. I was like, oh, he's such good. Similarly to the difficult conversations, which I think it's sort of um, it's like a similar topic that like
Mm.
you don't know why people behave the way they do or say what they do. You just make an assumption about it, but you experience your assumption about it as reality. Like, and so when you're hurt, you automatically say, oh, they meant to hurt me, or they knew this, it would hurt me, whatever. And like, all you need to do is just realize like, oh, you're making an assumption. And that like opens up so many more opportunities. And so like he can use it in FBI negotiation, but it's really like all of the same topics. So I love to hear him talk about it. And then like a year or two after I watched his master class, I saw he had written a blog post about like his favorite books of the year, and like The Upward Spiral was one of him, one of his favorite, because he was like, oh, it's so helpful to like explain, the neuroscience behind all of my ideas. I was, oh yes, like so it was very exciting to see
Yeah.
someone who was like I was already excited about to like be excited about the work that I've done.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, Alex, again, this was an absolute pleasure. Where can people find you? Where can they get your book? Again, I don't think we specifically mentioned your book is titled The Upward Spiral. Where can they find that and where can they follow you?
Yeah, and actually it just came out in the second edition a few months ago, and this time I did the audio book
Oh, cool.
myself, which was a lot of work. And I was like, why am
Yeah.
I doing this? Like spending 3 days in a recording studio. And I would be like, well, because it feels important. Like it'll
Yeah.
help people connect with this stuff more.
Did it take you 3
Um,
days to do it? I've always wondered. Like
yeah.
just full 8-hour days or
No, it was like 5 or 6 hours. It was a longer on the first day. And then
yeah.
it was probably like 6 or 7 hours on the first day. And then like 5 or 6 hours the next day. And then like we could wrapped it up in like 4 hours on the last day. It was exhausting,
Yeah.
but I was also like, right, but it's not like actual hard work. like, I mean, this is one of the things we didn't really get to, but like a lot of times people have a difficulty or frustration and then they compare it to someone else. And so they're like, so I shouldn't feel frustrated. No, if comparing it to someone else helps you accept what you're going through, oh, it's not that bad. That's good. But you don't use it to invalidate
Mm.
the experience. Like, oh, yes, it is hard. And I'm glad it's just sitting here in a chair. And I'm glad I only have to do this for 3 days. Like using that improv trick of yes and as
Yes,
opposed
and
to, oh, this is hard, but I shouldn't complain about it. Stop being weak, whatever. Um, because we have multiple motivations and multiple things that are important to us and multiple limitations, and just being clear and honest with ourselves about what those are. To answer your question more directly, yeah, you can get the book. I mean, it's everywhere books are sold. You can get the audiobook on Audible, and I'm I'm trying to create a lot more content now on Instagram at Alex Korb PhD. On my website, I have some resources. I have a free guide on the mental clarity blueprint, just like a little 5-step how you can shift your mindset to get back into that peak performance mode quickly. That's available on my website, alexcorbphd.com. But yeah, hopefully people found some of this useful and can start applying these tools.
I definitely did. I'll have your book and everything, and your Instagram and all the things linked in the description, so everybody can just scroll down to the bottom and find those. But again,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time. This was a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was wonderful talking with you.